Roguelands is a Borderlands 2 mod developed by Pyrex BLJ and Joltstu that completely changes the structure of Borderlands 2 and turns it into a fully functioning, room-clearing style roguelite. The object is simple. Destroy all enemies in your path on your way to defeating the ancient dragons of destruction. The mod is divided into 3 tiers, with each tier having progressively more difficult mobbing, bossing, and raid bossing rounds. As you progress, the level of your gear will stay fixed at 80, but more top-of-the-line gear will become available to you. It's an amazing mod that pushes the boundaries on the modding scene, not just for Borderlands 2, but for other games as well. I have put hundreds of hours into the mod, and have put together what I think is a pretty good guide for clearing this very difficult Borderlands challenge. Without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with the basics, character choice. There are 6 Vault Hunters to choose from, and each have their strengths and weaknesses as a whole. While I think that every Vault Hunter is capable of clearing the game, I don't think that each Vault Hunter is equally equipped. At the top of my list is Gage, the Necromancer. While many people complain on the Borderlands Reddit and other places about Gage not having a non-Anarchy endgame build, for Roguelands, we don't really care that Anarchy is our only real damage tool. Anarchy works great in all 3 tiers for clearing out mobs and bosses alike, but where Gage really shines is on defense. Deathtrap is in a tanking machine with little or no skill points needed to keep him completely healthy. From when you first get access to him to the very last tick of damage you deal, Deathtrap will take the vast majority of all enemy damage for the entire run. Against the dragons, the mod's most difficult foe, Deathtrap will zap them from afar to bring them down and stay out to tank all 4 dragons at once. Amazing. This lets Gage make excellent use of the B shield and keep her always DPSing instead of grog swapping to heal back to full health all the time. Gage was my first character I cleared Roguelands with, and overall is my most successful Roguelands character. The number one thing you are looking for on Gage is a way to quickly stack Anarchy. Jacob shotguns like the Quad, the Bushwhack, Scattergun, or Coach Gun are quite good at this. But you can use fire rate bonuses like the Better Half to make some other fully automatic options stack Anarchy as well. There's another mod you can install called Keep Anarchy that allows you to progress through Roguelands tiers 1, 2, and 3 without having your Anarchy stacks get reset each tier. Roguelands resets its tiers by putting you back in the main menu momentarily and then progressing you to the next tier, which works great for every Vault Hunter except Gage because it will restack your Anarchy. So installing the Keep Anarchy mod will make Gage very strong and allows you to, instead of just shooting at a Hyperion chest to get your stacks back up, actually just play the game. While Gage is a tier above the rest of the cast, some other contenders make their case for why they should be in the top echelon of power. At numbers 2 and 3, I have Krieg and Salvador. Both characters are tanky and deal a ton of damage. Both characters can out-sustain the damage dealt by all 4 dragons at once, while not needing to divert aggro with Deathtrap, Deception, or Turret. Melee Krieg is the class I use for speedrunning the mini version of Roguelands, and for good reason. He one-shots almost every mob with his melee builds, and if you can get access to some good HP scaling options like the Rough Rider and an HP Relic, Krieg just does not feel pain. I like to run adaptive shields for HP instead of roid shields for melee damage against most enemies. The same goes for class mods, as I like slab and meat class mods for HP and regen over sickle class mods for melee damage until getting access to the legendary sickle class mod. Krieg also has great synergy with explosive weapons and TDR rocket launchers, which can be a fun way to push through the mod, although I haven't successfully done it myself. The biggest thing for Krieg is finding a way to damage yourself below 33% HP in order to get the action skill reset from Buzzak's Rampage. A corrosive cloud grenade with a short fuse works great, but recently I have found that shooting splash damage weapons at the ground at your feet to damage yourself works faster and easier. You don't really want to let your opponents dictate when you fall below 33% HP, because once you fall below 50% HP, you lose access to your one-shot health gate protection. So when you are between 50% and 33% HP, you are very vulnerable. Instead, just damage yourself, activate Release the Beast, and go crazy. For Krieg, I recommend, while bossing, to mainly use your throwing Buzz Axe attack, as it cannot hurt you and still does good damage. I like to weaken a boss with tossable axes and then run in for the kill with regular melees. Salvador, who I have at number 3, is a Vault Hunter who many would call the strongest hunter in the history of the franchise. While I leave that discussion to the past and future generations of players to discuss, I actually feel like his position on this Roguelands tier list might actually be too high. Let's take a step back. It's true that a fully operational Salvador with most of his favorite gear and a ton of skill points is an absolute unit. He can wield 2 guns at once, giving him unique access to extra gun damage, critical hit amplification, slag, and healing. If you put the Grog nozzle in one hand and almost anything else in the other hand, it's basically GG. The issue I have with Salvador in this mod is that he takes a long time to get up and running. You don't get access to permanent gun zerking until you make it down at least the middle skill tree. Even then, the cooldown can be rough. And even when you are gun zerking, you are stuck hip firing both weapons, which, while you can put points into boost accuracy, it will never be as accurate as aiming down sights. Again, at full force, hip firing is not that big of a deal, but as you're leveling and fighting tough enemies, it is. Salvador needs skill points probably the most of any class. Gage, on the other hand, needs maybe a couple skill points to clear Roguelands, and she gets them right away. Salvador is the strongest dragon fighter in the game, but he is not the most consistent at getting to the dragon fight in the first place. Next up, we have Axton and Zero, who I think are equally powerful in Roguelands, but for very different reasons. First, I'll go over Axton as I have him at number 4. Axton, like Salvador, really likes his skill points. He wants access to skills from all 3 trees before he can really become a fully fledged dragon slayer. But he succeeds in Roguelands similarly to Gage. His turrets can tank the aggro, while Axton uses amazing shield regen synergy to rip enemies using something like a B shield. While Gage is probably the best B shield user, Axton is definitely right up there with her. He also has fantastic synergy with all kinds of splash damage weapons that other Vault Hunters simply can't make full use of, like the Thunderball Fist, Hornet, and most especially the Peak Opener. The Peak Opener is a meta-defining weapon in Roguelands. It cannot crit, but it deals ridiculous splash and explosive damage, and being an assault rifle, Axton can juice up its magazine size substantially and give it multiplicative damage scaling using a Rifleman comm. Axton's legendary soldier class mod is ridiculous when compared to some of the other Vault Hunters' options. He also has the unique ability to activate kill skills using his double turret trick, making him the only character that I will still spec kill skills going into a dragon fight. He's the only Vault Hunter of the original 4 who I feel comfortable playing without the Grog nozzle in a final fight. He falls to number 4 because of how strong Salvador is at max power, but Axton is no slouch and a great choice. Zero is next, and he is also quite good in the right situations. He is a burst character. He kills things very, very quickly in a short period of time. As long as that enemy is crittable or boreable, meaning you can stack up multiple enemies and shoot through them, Zero can erase them. His melee build, however, is not viable because of how much special gear you need to make it work. And in Roguelands, most of the time, you won't get something like a slag-bladed ruby or a Grog nozzle chain lightning combo. But his sniper builds are incredible along with his other crit-based gun builds. Where Zero can run into trouble is fighting enemies who cannot be easily crit. You only get one chance in Deception to play it right, and if you make a mistake, it can be the end of the run. But Zero is kind of a character who you don't need to watch the enemy AHP bar. As long as you're rinsing crits, the enemy will die. Zero's Deception makes him a capable B shield user, but his shield will get hit after leaving Deception or if you stand too close to your clone. So making effective use of your short time damage window is a must, but Zero can definitely get the job done. Maya comes in last for the tier list portion of this guide, and it's not as bad as it seems. Before the 1.1.0 update release that gave all Vault Hunters a really good chance to secure a Grog nozzle every game, Maya used to be a lot worse. Her main problem is that both her offense and defense revolve around mechanics not easily available in a dragon or other raid fight. First, she gets a ton of sustain from killing enemies. Life Tap is a very strong lifesteal kill skill, but it requires getting a kill, and then it's only active for 7 seconds. Against the dragons, you might not ever activate it. She also gets a ton of bonuses like fire rate and ricochet bullets against phase-locked enemies, but you can't phase-lock raid bosses. She is a character who revolves around putting things up with phase lock and putting them down with extremely good damage, all while healing from that damage. Against the dragons, she can't sustain through it. unless you get your hands on a grog nozzle. Once you do, you can swap to the grog, then use your action skill for the damage, which will heal you past health gate. It's a great technique, but it doesn't put her in a better position than other Vault Hunters. It just gives her a chance to be even with them from a dragon slaying standpoint. Maya does have some of the best mobbing builds in the game. Her phase lock is exceptional and allows you to make it far into a run without ever feeling too in danger. Her strengths lie in mobbing and killing medium HP tanks. She really struggles against raid bosses who spawn little to no ads for help. Okay, so now we know that character choice is important, and that the character you choose will not only have an impact on how you play, but also how successful you might be. Now, let's talk the basics of getting through these tiers. Tier 1 is all about the fundamentals of Borderlands. We are dealing with way less unique and legendary gear in Tier 1, and therefore it is the tier that requires probably the most decision making. Off the bat, you should have an idea of what kind of items you're looking for. Not all gear is created equally. For guns, there are a ton of options. Vladof snipers, especially the Droogs, are amazing. The Anarchist Vladof pistol is great. The Snyder Malawan sniper is good. The Jacobs Gatling guns and shotguns are strong. Bandit launchers are great to have for getting back up and fight for your life. TDR weapons are fantastic for getting through early mobbing rounds, as you can typically one-shot most small enemies with one TDR reload throw. You're going to want to diversify not only your ammo types, but also your elemental types. Roguelands does give you back all of your non-grenade and launcher ammo every round, which is nice. But it's still easy to go through all of your ammo, especially with a high fire rate weapon, and TDR reload throws. Elemental coverage is also important. Corrosive is a must for loaders as they take less damage from fire and kinetic weapons. Fire isn't a must-have, but is very, very nice for pushing through red HP bars quickly. Slag is nerfed in Roguelands compared to normal UVHM, as it only gives a 50% damage boost instead of a 200% damage boost. But it's still a great universal damage multiplier to add on to everything else you're doing. Shock is a great all-around element and really helps against shielded enemies, and Explosive is very nice against riot shield style enemies and if you're dealing damage in an area of effect. At a minimum, you're going to want to have one strong boss killing weapon of each element of Shock, Corrosive, and Fire to get past the raid bosses in tiers 1 and 2. There are 4 raid bosses you can get, in each game you'll see 2 of them. Terramorphous is weak to Fire, Hyperius is weak to Explosive and Corrosive, and Pyro P and Son of Cromarax are weak to Shock. Shock is the element that is the most important because you are very likely to see at least one of the 2 Shock weak raid bosses. But if you count the dragons, then Fire is equally as important. While we are on the discussion of raids, let's talk strategy. For Terramorphous, if you can use a high-powered fire weapon to shoot his large crit locations and win the fight quickly, great. I like to use the giant rock formation to make sure I don't get knocked off the map. But if you don't have the outright damage and Terramorphous sticks around, he can be a major problem. Terra's slap hits you for about 40% of your HP. A second slap will put you at critical HP, and a third is death. Sometimes Terramorphous will slap once, sometimes he'll slap twice, sometimes more and more. It's hard to know when a spam attack is coming. You must come prepared with healing. I usually use transfusion grenades and throw them at the center of the arena just before he reappears. That way, the transfusion trails will make it back to me during his slap phase. Other than that, I will kill the tentacles he spawns to activate kill skills and focus on critting Terramorphous as much as possible. Launchers and grenades are not that effective against Terramorphous. Hyperius is very unique. You start the fight by damaging him alone for a few seconds before he spawns in robot minions who shield for him. He spawns in 4 robots. You then need to damage those robots in order to break the link between them and Hyperius, making him vulnerable once again. Each time you break a minion tether, it will come back after about 30 seconds. You must break all 4 tethers before being able to damage Hyperius. That means that if you don't have a quick way to damage the minions, then you won't be able to hit Hyperius at all. Corrosive damage comes in really clutch here. An easy way to die against Hyperius is getting too close to any enemy when their shield returns. If you are point blank with a Jacob shotgun and you shoot into a shielded minion or Hyperius, you are likely dead to reflect damage. Hyperius, like all raids, deals more damage the longer it goes, and Hyperius is the king of this. It is impossible to dodge his Nova, and eventually it gets so strong that you can't out-sustain it with anyone but Salvador. But Hyperius is vulnerable to a lot of things. Fastball grenades and TDR chucks work wonders against the big guy. Zero can one-shot him with Bore, and Krieg can bypass the shields with melee attacks. The Son of Cromrax is simple, sometimes annoying, but overall a little easier in most cases than Hyperius or Pete. He has 2 huge crit spots on his arms that can break, leaving him less capable of inflicting damage to the Vault Hunter. He spawns an enormous amount of mods around him, which on one hand can become overwhelming, but on the other hand allows players to activate kill skills, get more ammo, and get back up from fight for your life. You want to watch out for Varkid evolution pods, as those flying enemies can become very annoying and dangerous. Craw has several immunity phases, but as long as you have a good shock weapon, it's an easy, sometimes long, but an easy fight. Pyro Pete is the big daddy of tier 1 and 2 raids in Roguelands. He can be slagged for a prolonged period of time, and he can be crit in the face by simply DPSing his shield and then shooting his helmet off, or by using the Amigo Sincero sniper rifle, which bypasses his shield and immediately pops his helmet off. But Pete is so tanky, and he has an insanely strong melee attack that will put you on critical life almost immediately. You cannot let him use it on you. He will also apply a powerful corrosive and fire dot on you that will not go away unless you activate the water pipes that are on the outskirts of the map. The water pipes will spawn in enemies for you to fight. One of them will spawn in spider rants and the other will spawn in rat bandits. These minions get stronger with every pull, so you can't let Pete stick around long enough for him to also be accompanied by very strong adds that basically act as other mini bosses. You can use the metal scaffolding on the outskirts of the map to protect yourself from the dot and bypass having to spawn in any of the mobs at all, but because of the nature of the Pete's movement, it's hard to keep him away and stay in your preferred location. You almost always have to move in a circular pattern away from the scaffolding when you know he won't do the dot attack, and then back to the scaffolding when you think it might be coming up, all while dealing enough DPS to him that you don't fall behind in the raid timer. Against Pete, I find myself spawning in his mobs just for the chance to loot a Roguelands candy power-up. There are 4 kinds. Each of them are associated to different developers of the mod. Mopey's candy, Jolt's candy, Pyrex candy, and Juso's candy. They each give different bonuses. They give projectiles, grenade bonuses, fire rate and ammo regen, and one-shot, melee, and speed respectively. They are insanely good at helping kill bosses. The green candy is the best for killing ground-based enemies, as it makes your melees one-shot everything. What about your other gear? Your gear in your other slots comes down to personal preference heavily. I typically like to run a slag transfusion grenade that is either longbow or lobbed for delivery method, with a short fuse and as many projectiles as possible. These grenades allow me to slag, heal myself, and slightly damage enemies. They are also ridiculously OP with Jolt's candy. But there are so many grenade options, like Teslas, corrosive clouds, fire bursts, and their unique legendary counterparts. I will typically swap to one of these, like the anti-infection or the pandemic, if I feel that I have my defense taken care of already. If I have slag and healing taken care of by something else in my build, like Salvador's second gun, then I will typically pivot to a damage grenade. Your class mod is up to you. I will briefly mention the ones I mostly use for each Vault Hunter. All the legendary class mods are good, even the Slayer of Terramorphous class mods can be useful. For Gauge, I take the accuracy and reload speed buffing class mods. I will take a class mod with plus 5 or 6 points in Wires Don't Talk if I have a dependency on shock damage. Other than that, I'm mainly looking to buff fire rate and gun damage. For Krieg, I like the legendary sickle for melee damage, a slab or a meat class mod for HP stacking and regen, or a regular sickle with as many points and silence the voices as possible. For Sal, I like the pistol damage class mods, the ammo efficiency class mods, and the Gunzerkin class mods with points to last longer in the Yippee-Ki-Yay. His legendary Hoarder, Berserker, and Gunzerker class mods are insane, but if we're talking strictly damage, his Raider and Chaotic Evil Monk class mods that give plus 6 in Money Shot are his strongest. For Axton, I like the Rifleman comp for any assault rifle builds. I like his reload speed and magazine size buffs for TDR reload chuck builds. His fire rate class mod is very versatile and strong, his Grenadier comm is amazing for making splash damage builds pop, and his legendary class mod, the Soldier, is great. If I'm rocking a B shield, I will sometimes swap to a shield regen class mods to have the B up almost all the time. For Zero, you cannot really go wrong with the sniper comm. He also has great fire rate class mods and a decent pistol comm. I tend to go only aggressive options on Zero. Maya has a few good options. Her cat class mod is her iconic SMG buffing comm, and it's quite strong, especially the legendary version. Her legendary siren comm is so good, and she also has great defensive comms as well. It's worth noting that you should be especially watchful on any Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep maps for class mods, as they all have Dungeons and Dragons style prefix systems attached to them, and the stats and skills on those class mods are very different than base games. Some give great buffs to fire rate, critical to hit damage, and other things. For shields, I generally go with either Turtle if I have good shield synergies, Adaptive if I have good health synergies, or Absorb to give me a boost against enemies with guns. I usually don't go for the simple no effect shields or the booster shields, as I have to look at the ground to pick up the booster pack, which takes me out of the flow of combat. For legendaries, the B is awesome. The Neo Generator and Evolution are the best adaptive shields. The Antagonist is a great shield for deflecting slag bullets to enemies. The Sham opens up a ton of offensive launcher options and is great against bandits and loaders. The Sponge is also a great absorb shield, and something like the Rough Rider could be best in slot for someone like Krieg. Keep in mind that the Tortoise and the Hoplite, although they make you slow, can be unbeatable on characters like Axton or Gage. For relics, be on the lookout for elemental boosters. You'll want one of each element. A Bone of the Ancients relic will give you an element and an action skill cooldown buff, which is awesome. The Deputy Badge and Sheriff's Badges are great for shotguns and pistol builds respectively. The Mouthwash relic is a must grab as it pairs insanely well with the Toothpick Assault Rifle. The specific weapon type boosting relics like pistol or sniper damage are good, but get outclassed later on by other options. The cooldown relic is great on almost every Vault Hunter as well. A shield regen relic could be a great niche item for B shield abuse. Where do we look for this gear? Well, there are red chests on every level, but there are also hidden loot sources on almost every map. All but 2 of the mobbing maps have vault symbols hidden that give relics and iridium. Find them and discover them for better relic options and more spending power before the raid boss rounds. Each of those mobbing rounds will also have Butt Stallion pressure plates, which will give purple guns in tiers 1 and 2. Then, in tier 3, these pressure plates will give legendary and above gear of all types, which is very powerful. On mini boss rounds, there is a side objective to shoot certain objects. Do this to be rewarded with several purple grenades and shields to pick from. Then, on tier 3, this reward changes to all E-Tech weapons, which make it a great place to get plasma casters and E-Tech launchers. Let's talk Iridium. You want as much Iridium as you can get because before every raid boss round, you get to go to Sanctuary to spend your Iridium either for more maximum ammo in the form of SDUs, or you can pull from the mystery box for 75 Iridium per pop. As a general rule, I will pull from the box as much as possible and only take the bare minimum amount of SDU that I can. On Salvador, sometimes I will skip SDUs even more because he can regen ammo better than other Vault Hunters. This strategy allows me to know what my most powerful weapons are before I purchase SDUs. However, if I have a strong option for shock, corrosive, and fire already, I will prioritize SDUs instead. In Roguelands, you can also respec your skills. Respecing your skills costs money, so you can't spam the respec button early on in a run, but you can respec a lot throughout the game if you want. I will do it sometimes after I learn what raid boss I'm fighting for tiers 1 and 2 so that I don't waste any points on kill skills if I'm fighting Hyperius, for example. I will sometimes respec many times before the dragon fight to get my build feeling just right. It's finally time to talk dragons. The dragons are always the raid boss on tier 3 and they are tough. What makes them so tough is how they deal so much damage, especially when all 4 of them are up and they give you very little room for error when it comes to fight for your life. If you go down, you are likely dead, as the dragons are very tanky and very fast in the air. They can be slagged, however, and they can be crit. Each dragon resists their innate element, as each dragon is assigned a given element. There is Brood, the green corrosive dragon, Boost, the purple slag dragon, Helianth, the shock blue dragon, and Big Red, the fire dragon. You can shoot a dragon in the sky and they will land and use their special ability. Only one dragon can land at a time. Typically, you want to shoot the green dragon first, as when he lands, he will spawn little green dragons that can be used for boar, blood explosion, kill skills, or getting up from fight for your life. Once he spawns his dragons, kill him. Do not let him get away. If he flies up, bring him back down without hitting any other dragons if you can. Gage and Axton can't really control which dragons come down as easily because Death Trap and turrets hit whomever they want. Then you should bring down whatever dragon you can kill easily next, while keeping alive the small dragons spawned by Brood. I typically will bring down Boost, the purple dragon, down second, as him putting a slag debuff on me makes the shock and fire dragons so much more deadly. The blue dragon is very bad to bring down when other dragons are low but not dead, because as his name Helianth would imply, he heals the other dragons. So do not bring down blue if other dragons are low and not dead. The red dragon is tanky and deals a lot of damage. He also resists the element that all the other dragons are weak to, fire. That makes him especially deadly. When he lands, be careful not to immediately shoot him, as you will die to reflect damage. Just watch the platforms and don't get burned alive. The order of the dragon killing is just the first thing you have to know. Second is that the dragons will resist whatever damage type was used to shoot them out of the sky. I like to use kinetic weapons to tag them out of the air and then switch to a fire weapon to finish them off. Secondly, you need to be ready to switch to a healing weapon at a moment's notice. If you take a hit, swap to a grog nozzle and deal damage. If you have a chain lightning or other quick hitting skill or grenade, use that with the grog nozzle in your hand. If you are using a peak opener or other delayed damage weapon, you can swap to your grog nozzle just after shooting your primary weapon to allow the damage to heal you. You can get a grog nozzle by clearing the final horde round on stage 3, activating the hidden token, offering 100 iridium at the altar, and then buying a grog nozzle at the previously hidden vending machine. Sometimes there will not be a grog nozzle in there. In that case, take your next best option like a slag ruby or something. If you have a transformer shield, it can be worth it to put it on when all you have left is the shock dragon or one other dragon. Keep in mind that if you can keep your B shield up, it does wonders against the dragons, but most characters just simply can't. So in general, your strategy is to bring them down one at a time, slag them, and shoot their faces, while always being ready to heal up. Axton and Salvador each have skills that lessen the duration of enemy dots on you. Those have a lot of value in the dragon fight as well. For the very best weapons in the game to be looking out for, I will be giving you 4 weapons of each type to be on the lookout for, and you can expand your knowledge from there. For pistols, I have the Hornet, Hector's Paradise, Lady Fist, and the Unkept Herald. Shotguns, the Conference Call, the Butcher, the Unicorn Explosion, and the Orphan Maker. The Assault Rifles, Peak Opener, Toothpick, Ogre, and Shreddifier. For SMGs, the Sandhawk, the Florentine, the Slagga, and the Baby Maker. For snipers, La Udamilla, Amigo Sincero, Pimpernel, and Droog. And for launchers, the Worldburn, the Norfleet, the Bada Boom, and the Hive. Okay, that's going to be the end of the guide. I hope you all learned something about Roguelands, and maybe you might be dabbling your feet into the modding scene after watching this video. I will have links in the description of how to download Roguelands and how to mod Roguelands further with even more mods on top of it. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you all out there defeating those dragons. Bye.